As part of this meeting, before we go forward with the reports of the President, the Executive Director and the Treasurer, we look forward to hearing Edahn Golan deliver a keynote address on market trends. I wish you a pleasant and informative afternoon and invite Mr. Golan to take the floor.
Good afternoon. Maybe I'll use this, it'll be a little bit easier. I have the bad habit of liking to move around when I talk, so. I'm going to give a little bit of a market update today. Kind of take a top to bottom look at the industry. I'm going to be kind of brief at a couple of points. There's so much that could be said about the industry. Some of these issues you're very familiar with, so there's no point dwelling on them. We're going to talk a little bit about production and the changes we're seeing in the market, rough inventories and how they're changing. It's a special request from Elodie. Prices of polished, retail activity. I have a surprise topic here that I think you will find of interest. If you don't, just tell me and I'll kill it. What happened to this? That's a surprise item. No data, no numbers.
State of the market. State of the market. Can you refresh that page?
Are we doing? I think it's a good opportunity for a social game. Maybe we'll introduce each other and tell an embarrassing story about ourselves. My embarrassing story is I come prepared for a presentation and apparently I'm not. Series of numbers, starting with the beers. So we'll start with production. I want to take a look at, it's easiest to look at producers because most of them are public companies, so they produce a bunch of numbers as well. De Beers forecast for this year was 32 to 34 million carats. Just to put this in proportion, it's kind of in line with what they did last year. Based on the last quarterly reports, released by Anglo-American, they are in line. They are about to meet that goal for this year. Alrosa is kind of an unknown. So in January, they said they're going to produce 30 to 33 million carats. Last year, it was 32.4. So they did not plan to produce more this year, which is kind of interesting. But who knows what is it that is exactly happening out there? It's kind of a black hole. Let's assume that they're somewhere within a certain range because they did start to produce. If they're not selling the goods, at least they're keeping that inside in their vaults. Katoka did not produce an outlook. The only reason that I didn't put here outlook but forecast is because of Katoka, because they did not provide an outlook. So my forecast is anywhere between 6 to 6.5 million carats. A little bit above last year's. Rio Tinto really wants to increase their production. What this really means in practical terms is that we're looking here, so in terms of these outlooks, 72 to 78.5 million carats. These guys, and it's kind of in line with what we had last year. So in other words, what we're really looking at here is that despite everything that happened in 2020 and the ramp up that we saw in 2021, the expectation of the largest producers seems to be that this year will have similar demand to last year, which is a little surprising because last year we know was an unusual year. Everybody understood it's going to be an unusual year as it started. So why keep the same level of production? I think there's a good reason for that. One of it, by the way, has to do with the fact that you want to keep your staff working, you know, and ramp up takes time. So that's the outlook. These guys represent 62% of the 120 million carats reported by KP last year. So 2/3 of production with these 4 companies gives us a very good indication of where the market is going. And I think that in that regard, it's telling us that the amount of rough that's going to come, that came into the market, Alrosa, of course, is the unknown, but let's assume that Alrosa is somewhere within a reasonable level of production, if not supply. We're going to see a similar level of supply this year. In terms of what is actually happening at mining, so first of all, it's back at full capacity. It takes a while to ramp up a mine and bring it back to full capacity. COVID is behind us. It's not that it disappeared, but now it's an issue that we know how to manage. So from the standpoint of how do you run a business, no big deal. Inventories, understood to be low, so Alrosa was the only company that constantly reported of what's happening with inventories. They had low inventories at the beginning of the year. Most companies, as I said, because we know there was a rise in demand in the beginning of this year, production is similar to last year, so we're looking at about the same levels of supply to the market, and therefore inventory levels are kind of in line with everything else, meeting market demand. That's the long and short of it. Of course, the one exception is Alrosa. Who knows what's going on there, what they're sitting on, what they have, what they don't. In the midstream, so moving one step down, I heard a bunch of midstream people complain about how difficult it is and how hard it is, and we have a decline in sales and prices. Guys, stop. Fantastic year. I'll just put this in context in a moment. In a single sentence, whatever declines took place this year, in any which way you want to measure it, we are still well above 2019, which is the last quote-unquote normal year that we had. So it was a very good year. Everybody made a lot of money. Slow return from Diwali. So there is still some concern in the market at the end of the day. Diwali took place and ended. And when you talk with Indian manufacturers and you ask them what's going on, they said, oh, yeah, we're starting to ramp up, but we're doing it at a slow pace. One of the ways that they're doing it, so first of all, the one thing that, you know, this is true for mining, it's also true for manufacturing, you never want to lay off people. Skilled labor is difficult to come by, and if you lay off people, there's a good chance that when you rehire, you're not going to hire the same people back. I see some former mining company members nodding in approval. It's expensive, it's difficult, it takes time, and at the end of the day, it's a lot cheaper to keep your people on hand. The way they're dealing with it in the midstream is, oddly, even companies that do not deal with lab-grown are polishing a little bit of lab-grown just to keep, you know, things going, so they can cover their costs. Conservative rough buying. So there is a little bit of buildup. So we said there's no inventories or low inventories of rough on the mining level. We're seeing a certain buildup of inventory at the midstream, and that's leading buyers to be very selective in their buying. They're buying what they need. If they can refuse some goods, they will refuse them. Anything they can do to sort of delay expenses, because there's a certain amount of uncertainty in the market right now, right? So yes, we all know there was a very good year so far, but what's going to happen now when we're approaching the holiday season? Will there be a rise? Will there be a decline? We're hearing a lot of negative things from retailers. We'll talk about that in a minute and see if we can debunk that. But the long and short of it is that, you know, if we're seeing caution in the market, I should be cautious in my behavior. So there's conservative rough buying. Another very good thing that happened to the midstream of the last few years is self-financing. So we know that Financing was, I don't want to say abundant, but a lot easier and much more available in the past. The big change was that at some point the midstream was looking at how to cut their costs. One way of doing this is reducing their financing. One of the results of that is their loan memo. If you looked at what happened at retail in the past, you saw that about 50% of the loose diamonds that retailers had on hand were there on memo. And the midstream could afford it for two reasons. One, money was cheap, so what do I care? And if I can command another % on the goods that are on memo, it's easy money. But the other one was they also wanted to capture market share. Now the money is not cheap. Why do that? So what we're seeing is that memo is about 16 to 18% currently in the market, down from the 50% that we had in the past, as I said. So that's a good thing. Many are involved in lab grown. It's an opportunity. Some of them are doing it purely in an opportunistic way. Some of them are really investing in this. Invested in growers. They are growers. They're polishing these goods. They're coming up with programs. Some of them have complete full divisions that are completely dedicated to this thing. One of the things that I didn't mention before about manufacturing was that those that are just for this period of time kind of going into lab grown, they're doing it in the same factories where they're polishing natural. So there's no separation. I don't like it. I don't think it's the smartest move in the world, but that's the case. Financing, conservative, below historic levels. We said that. I think the important thing is once again Alrosa. And why is Alrosa important? Alrosa, as we know, supplied about 30% of the sales to the market, of the rough to the market. And part of the sanctions is that you cannot use dollars. So even if you do buy Alrosa goods, I hope you don't, but if you do, you're doing this, you can't do this with dollars. From the standpoint of a bank, so a bank, you know, how do banks work, right? Money is an asset at the end of the day. And what banks do in the beginning of every year or before the beginning of every year, they decide we're going to allocate so much money for this industry and so much to real estate and so much to diamonds. And so this is money that is earmarked towards an industry. Now, all of a sudden, a third of the goods are not allocated, are not going to be sold in dollars. What does the bank do? So a bank, you know, doesn't like money to just linger around. At the end of the day, what they want is to see that this money is being used and generate an income, and if it's not being used, they're going to divert it to something else. And what tends to happen, won't necessarily happen, but what tends to happen in those kind of situations is that that money never comes back. So if a bank allocated X amount of dollars to the diamond industry and it's only using 75, 78, 76, 80% of that, that extra 20% is going now to other industries, and it's going to be very difficult to get it back. Simply because it already proved to generate money elsewhere, so why not take advantage of the opportunity? Moving down to retail, retail is providing us with a lot of interesting opportunities, and there's a couple of things we need to be careful with. I'm purposely starting with China because China is sort of the oddest market these days. First of all, it's the second biggest consumer market as far as diamonds are concerned. We're seeing that imports are down so far this year. And sales that were okay up until now are starting to decline. So for the year to date, it's still up, but we're seeing where this is going. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, where is China going? And I got to admit that there's an element about China that I don't understand at all. China is always very good at looking at the world, understanding what's happening elsewhere, and adopting, and first of all, adapting, but secondly, also adopting policies that they see elsewhere that they know will benefit them. In the beginning of COVID, there was a lockdown anywhere in the world, everywhere in the world. Maybe not in Georgia, but otherwise, you know, I mean, I'm talking Georgia, Europe, talking Georgia, US. And the reason was that we didn't know what was going to happen. We knew it's dangerous. We know it's contagious. We didn't know how to treat it. So lockdowns made sense. And it took a while to stop and think, like, wait a second, but there's an economic impact. And over time, what most countries learn to do is kind of balance and constantly readjust that balance between allowing economic activity, which required allowing people to go out and meet and go to the offices and factories, et cetera, mines, and still keeping a way of managing a pandemic. China, for some reason, is continuing with the lockdowns. There are more lockdowns, there are less lockdowns, there are certain areas, they open some areas, but at the end of the day, it's the only country today in the world that has lockdowns as a standard part of the general policy. And what it results in the decrease in retail activity. We all know that the beauty of a diamond can only be appreciated if you hold it in your hand and you take a look at it. It's very difficult to appreciate a diamond looking at it online. And proof of that is that if you look at sales, at online sales over the years, the industry that lagged behind the most was always diamond jewelry. So cars were sold online, it's an expensive item. Houses were sold online without seeing them. Shoes that you need really to try them on first sold online. And diamond jewelry didn't sell online. Why? Because you didn't have the opportunity to do, ooh, wow, look at this. This is beautiful. I love it. So at the end of the day, online is more and more adapted, but it's still lagging behind the rest of the industries, and China is kind of a good way to prove it. Why is it important? Let's look at the United States and then go back to China for a moment. So I provided, those who saw my presentation last month, I said $94 billion in jewelry sales took place in the United States last year, and those are based on Department of Commerce figures, and Department of Commerce usually revises their figures a little bit later, and it's usually 1%, 2%, 3%, sometimes 5%. This year, they went all out and completely revised the number, and the new number is $86 billion. But we are still looking at a 46% rise year over year. That forces me, of course, to readjust my forecast. So I'm still looking at a rise for this year. And you may ask yourself, first of all, why a rise? So I'll start by saying that I hate to provide forecasts. My clients often insist on it, and I always hate doing it. And I have the bad habit of going back to my old research papers from a year or two ago and say, what forecast did I provide for this one thing that now I have the facts for? It's you know, it's never fun. But sometimes I get it right, but usually, you know, you're off by certain percent points. But I'm still going to provide a forecast for this forum for a simple reason. First of all, the gloom that we're seeing lately, we really need to dispel it because we are seeing an increase. So far today, and we're going to see some retail numbers, everything is up. My expectation that even if there will be a decrease in jewelry sales, a year-over-year decrease in December, which is the most important and percentage-wise the provider of the largest amount of sales, we'll still be ahead. Let's look at it in terms of diamonds. So De Beers readjusted its I guess together with the US total figures, readjusted its diamond jewelry sales figures. I trust these figures are accurate, $47 billion. It's a very handsome number one way or another, 34% and up. I don't remember a single year in the history of the diamond industry where a single market provided a 34% increase in sales. So this is beautiful. So now let's think about this once again back. Let's talk about China for a moment. For this to happen, the American consumer has to be able to walk out of their house, have discretionary income, go into a store, take a look at a bunch of diamonds, and make a decision and make a purchase. Not only that, so and we don't have this in China, but not only that, we also have to ask us, so, you know, even if the Chinese do, and I don't want to run back to the previous slide. But even if the Chinese do decide to keep the lockdowns, to remove the lockdowns during the holiday season, and the Chinese don't really have a reason for that at this point because it's not that November, December is important to the Chinese economy in particular, but we're still expecting to see the Chinese market decreasing their purchases for this year. But for the United States, I do expect sales to go up. Where are we? Here we are. My forecast is up 1.4%. So why, when we are looking at a decrease in business activity at these times, should we expect an increase overall, especially when December is such a strong impact on the rest of the year? Inflation is here. There are a bunch of other issues that are impacting the American market. Money is more costly. And the reasons are this. I'm going to start with an odd one. The midterm elections. The Democrats have a feeling of a win. It's not because they won. It's because they were expected a huge fall. And that didn't happen. U.S. Democrats are primarily big city folks. Republicans, small towns, the open areas of the United States. Most jewelry business is big city business. When Democrats are happy with election results, and I can pull out data from going back 20 years more, we always see a rise in jewelry sales. We always see a rise in diamond jewelry sales. There's a sense of optimism. Future looks bright. We can allow to spend. So that's one thing that's working in favor. The second thing that's working in favor has to do with air travel. The cost of travel, we just spoke about this, doubled and tripled around the world. The American household, the way they think about their savings is, we earmark this for travel, and we earmark this money for upgrading the house, and we earmark some money for buying a new car. Now, all this travel money is not going to be used, or they're going to use much less than what they would have usually. So I have a lot more discretionary income to spend. And where they spend it? At the store. What are they going to buy? A bunch of things, but including diamond jewelry. Diamond jewelry is always a big thing in the holidays. So despite the fact that there's a decline in the number of weddings, decline in kind of the overall economic outlook, still I expect a small rise, especially back on a very, very good first quarter this year. So let's look at what that looked like. So first of all, let's look at prices. So this is 1 carat rounds, natural, of course. This is data collected from retailers. So this is what retailers pay. And what we see here, let's see if I can use this. So this is 2020. This is 2021. This is the mid area of 2021. And look at where 2022 is next to it. And I'll show you sales in a minute. Even with prices going down, they're still above last year's levels. Now, true, you can say, well, 2 carats behave differently, and thirds are in a different way, and, you know, rounds are not ovals, they're not princess, but this gives you a very good indication. The majority of the market is rounds, right? 86% is rounds. So look at how this is behaving. So we know, so this is one reason to say I'm optimistic. This is the retail price of the same item. First of all, you have to notice this. Look at how volatile this is and how flat this is. And there's a reason for that. Retailers like stability. Retailers like stability so much that they will do everything, not to play around with their price points. Everything they could possibly do to not play with their price points. The only thing that will make them play with their price points is to protect their margins. And we'll talk about margins in a minute. But if you look at prices in the market, and this has been true since I've been tracking it, so at least 20 years. If you look at rough, and then at the price of the wholesale price of the resulting polished, and then you look at the retail price of the same item, over a time, say over a year, the fluctuations go rough, Midstream, retail. Goes up, goes down, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of fluctuations with rough, a lot less for wholesale prices, and hardly any at retail. Now let's compare the two. And one of the things that you see here, and I think this is interesting in the context of, for example, for the wholesalers among us, is what's happening over here. Over the past year and a half, retailers have increased their margins. And here's the rationale. So first of all, they are doing everything in their power, more than keeping retail price points stable. They'll do everything in their power to protect their margins. If there's anything that a jewelry retailer in the United States teaches their kids that are about to come into the business, protect it fiercely. For this item, I'll say the margins are about 37, 38%, usually. Here it's closer to 40. In other words, the vendors, the wholesalers walk into a store and say, hey, I have this beautiful diamond, you gotta take it, this is how much it is. So you go, are you insane? Did you see the prices are coming down? Consumers are not walking to, look at the store's empty. You can't charge me that much, you gotta give me a discount. You gotta give me a discount, you know what, never mind, go out. I'll find somebody else who'll give me the price, the right price. They get a better price. They are not fast to pass it to their consumer. In other words, first of all, there's an opportunity here. And the opportunity is raise prices. Don't lower them so fast. The second opportunity is that you need to talk with these guys and really understand what's happening in the store, because maybe there is business. The third thing to understand here is that retailers, in a way, are kind of afraid of what's going to happen in the holiday season. They themselves are not sure what's going to happen, and that's why I do not have a graph to show this, but I can tell you that inventories at retail are down. They're efficient. By the way, so this is another thing we can see in the market. The market is becoming much more efficient in terms of inventory, in terms of pricing, in terms of production, in terms of manufacturing. This entire business has become very, very healthy. Pardon me for using the word. Financing. All of that, all together, all lined up, demand from the consumer market, is all of it says this is a very, very healthy market. Let's not screw it up. Okay. Any guesses what the surprise topic is? Thank you, John. Lab grown.
Gee, what a surprise.
So, Ronnie, let's talk about lab grown for a moment. And I'm just going to toss a bunch of numbers, and we'll do this fast. How are we on time? We'll do this fast, and the numbers are not important. What's important are the trends, okay? Above everything. What you should really pay attention to are trends because they tell a story. So one of my clients asked me to start track the lowest possible price of any lab-grown diamond out there. And what I did was I tracked parcels coming from manufacturers at the end, and transaction prices at the end of every quarter. We started in the third quarter of 2018 and followed it then. What we saw is that there was a decline because Lightbox was announced with the $800 per carat price tag. Immediately everybody reduced prices, but then they kind of said, you know what, maybe we should raise prices a little bit and see what happens, and they did well. Then this happened. What do you think happened here? Not COVID, this is the end of the year, right? They fell victim to their own sales pitch. What's the sales pitch? We don't employ kids. We don't kill anybody in Africa. We are cheap as heck. So the children, baloney, pardon the term, I was going to use this harsher word, but the whole child labor thing went out the window. Hardly anybody's being killed in Africa over diamonds, for sure. They're left with, we're cheap, we're cheap. Now think about that as a selling proposition. As a selling proposition, what you're telling your consumer to do, your customer, is to do a lot of window shopping. You walk into a store and say, hey, this item cost $3,500 2 or 3 years ago. Last year, it was already at $25. This week, you're asking for $1,400, but hang on. I understand what's going on here. I'm going to go across the street and look at Joe's and see maybe he has it for $1,300. Maybe Jack down the street has it for $1,200. So now, the Indians like to call it the race to the bottom. It's not a race to the bottom, but they fell victim to their own PR. 2021 was a good year. Some of these guys were able to increase prices. It's kind of difficult to tell. It's just impossible to put all the size ranges when it's so crowded. But what we see here is smaller goods. Smaller goods, all of a sudden, were in great demand. And I don't want to mention the name of a Russian miner, but it could be connected in a way. What we're seeing over here is the prices of the larger goods. 1 carat, the typical business, is really down. By the way, why? Because of demand. Demand is high, so they're reducing prices. Everybody wants to sell. They're competing against each other. So let's reduce prices because I want the guy to buy from my store and not at Joe's. But 2 carats are coming down as well. 2 carats is this item over here, the second from the bottom. And you see 2 carats had this long drop, right? Together with this is 1.5, right? The question is why? And the answer is very simple. They went through the same trend that we saw with all of the other goods. So finally, we can make CVDs that produce thirds in polish. So the diamond industry rushes to supply these goods. The lab-grown folks in the industry rush to supply these goods. There's an oversupply. Prices are coming down. There's a competition over price, and it's a lot cheaper to make. Not to mention the margins are insane, so nobody really cares. Well, everybody cares about reducing their margins, but they can afford it because what's the big deal? I'm still making heaps of money. 2 carats are now as available as thirds were a few years ago. So they're going through the same process. Now the cost of production of the 4 and 5 and 6 carat items in rough are coming down, right? It's a typical technology system, right? You have better quality, it costs you less to produce, and you're supplying the market with an item that is an improved item. So this is why these guys over here are declining. Total value of sales is rising. So prices are coming down. Unit sales are jumping through the roof, pushing the total dollar value up. This is what's really happening with prices all around. If we put it at a single item, so I decided, just for the sake of this presentation, we looked at 1 carat rounds before, so look at the comparison over here. The same thing. So lower cost, better production led to a shift in consumer demand, which means higher color, higher clarity, and bigger items. I want to put this in context. Up until 2020, so about 3 years of selling lab-grown, the American consumer walked into a store, was told there's such a thing called lab-grown, or they asked about it. They had a budget in mind, let's say $3,500. And then they realized that they can spend a lot less. What did they do? They bought the same item. When you look, up until mid-2020, if you compared lab-grown sales by size, color, clarity, and popularity, and naturals, what we saw was they were buying rounds at the same ratio, about 86%. They bought the same sizes. The breakdown was the same. They bought the same up until 1 carat. So as more goods were becoming available, of course, that moved. And the same color clarity combinations, SI, GH1, GHI. In halfway through the pandemic, that changed. The Zoom era. What do I mean by the Zoom era? All of a sudden you're sitting at home and nobody sees anything that happens below our shoulder level. And sales of stud earrings just went through the roof. Not only they went through the roof, there's a psychological element that it took a while to understand. The psychological element is this. I, the consumer, know that these are synthetics, right? So the diamond industry talking about synthetics had some power. I don't know if this is the real thing, but because we have the screen between us when we're having a conversation on Zoom, you can't really tell what is it that I have in my ears. I allowed myself to buy lab grown. And then I allowed myself to buy bigger lab grown. And then I allowed myself to buy bigger lab grown with higher colors and better clarity, among other, because R&D allowed more of these goods to come out. So what does it look like in practice? I'm going to look at both items. So this is everything. This is just for the year to date. Best-selling item, 104 versus 153. But the important thing, once again, look at the trend. So the best-selling item and the best-selling item. They're buying bigger goods, better color, higher clarity for a lot less. I mean, it's a bargain. From the American standpoint, from the way the American consumer thinks, it's all about price. Gross margin, 36%. It's standard in the industry for years and years and years and years and years. 52.2. I want to say something about this 52%. In 2020, it was 49%. Last year, it was 50%. The beginning of this year was 51. In October, it was already 54. They are crushing it in terms of not just protecting their margins, of pressuring. They understand, they smell how desperate the wholesalers are when they come to sell. Because as I said, inventories for lab-grown inventories are insane. There's a lot of people in the market. There's a lot of competition. So they're kind of setting themselves up in that regard. Average carat weight, so this is all goods, not just the best sellers. As I said, much bigger. Average carat weight, so this is the one number that I find interesting. This is up 3.2%. Why? There's a whole crowd out there that is willing to spend a lot more on natural diamonds. I spoke with a bunch of retailers in the past couple of months that all, except one, told me that the $20,000 and above price bracket is doing a lot better than it did at the beginning of the year and a lot better than it did for as long as they're in the business. There are a lot of people spending a lot of money on diamonds, natural diamonds these days. So this is 2 carats, 3 carats, 4 carats, 5 carats, very nice items. Total value of sales, so we saw that lab grown is doing very well, so it's almost 40%. 7% decline, but we're still making a lot of money, okay? Let's not lose heart. In jewelry, we're doing very well. And then market share, so it's up to 12%. This is loose, the larger loose, right? This is loose at retail. Just ending this up, last, just one item, because it really struck, it just jumps out of the data. The 2 carriers. Doubled in sales. There was a decline in October. Up until September, it was 101%. In September, it was 101. There was a drop in October. And actually, you know what? Let me talk about that for a moment. I think this is interesting. So one of the things that happened during COVID is the whole seasonality went out of whack. All of a sudden, the trends that we saw that we can use to think about how do we organize our business and when do we have vacations and just went out the window. This year, June and July were weaker. After May, we had a decline. It's a seasonal trend. In August, it went up again. Usually August goes up because of international travel, so we didn't have a whole lot of international travel, and the increase wasn't that big, but we saw an increase in business. September, October, there's always a decline in activity. In November, there's a rise, and in December, there's, and of course, this is going to happen this year. November, December are going to increase. Month over month, for sure. How is it going to happen year over year? We'll see. But in that regard, I think it's a good sign as well, because what it's really saying is that we're returning to a normal sort of business cycle. It's a lot easier to make our long-term plans. So this is this for the lab-grown, the 2-carat lab-growns. Everybody took photos, I saw, so I won't go through the numbers. Those are the numbers. This is it. Thank you. Questions? Yes? Do I have time? Are we allowed? We're going to cut off the TV feed so it doesn't...
Thank you, Edahn. We have a few minutes for a few short questions around the table and from the room.
Edahn, thank you for this presentation. On the last topic, to what extent do you think these growing sales in lab-grown is really cannibalizing sales in natural, or do you think it's just a parallel market growing bigger every year?
Well, for 2 carats, it's definitely cannibalizing lab-grown because it's a business that was very much a natural. So let's talk about why I'm still optimistic about this year. One of the things that we saw during COVID was that a lot of people bought a lot of very simple jewelry. Right? You go online, you see those cute little earrings on Amazon for $20. What do I care? If I don't like them, I'll send them back. No big deal. By the way, if anybody had to guess here, what was the best-selling item last year? Just the category. Studs? Okay. You'll be surprised. Chains. Necklace chains. Not bracelets. Actually, bracelets came a close second. But bracelets, chain necklaces made out of silver, under $100. So the American consumer, when they buy a lot, they bought cheap. So once again, is there cannibalization? Yes. Does it create new customers? Absolutely. So those that couldn't afford diamonds before now say, hell, and wouldn't buy, now can. Now, let's be honest. Everybody in the United States can afford diamonds. I mean, you can go into Walmart, literally, buy engagement rings for $199, for $200. The United States is a country where even homeless people, and I'm not mocking this in any way, even homeless people own cars. So there's something about being a consumer in the United States that kind of forces you to buy. There's something in the culture. So if anybody wanted to buy a diamond, they could. But now you can buy a nice diamond. And if you couldn't, and you wouldn't, because I'm not going to buy something ugly, I'm not going to go to Walmart, I'm going to go buy at a jeweler's, then you'll buy, now finally you will buy. Now if you're a 14-year-old, I look at my daughter's 14 years old, all of a sudden she wants me to buy her diamonds. And ask her why. I say, oh, Dad, I saw this thing on TikTok that says, there's this thing, you should know about it. Cheap diamonds, what is this? I'm like, oh, okay, let's have a discussion. Daughter, sit down. But this is what we're looking at. So we are seeing new customers. We are seeing additional business. We are seeing it was called aspirational by some people. So we are seeing this. But at the end of the day, we're seeing a lot of customers walking into stores and preferring lab-grown for a variety of reasons, primarily price. I'll tell you a story from recent time. I spoke with a retailer in Florida, and he tells me recently people are walking into my store to upgrade their engagement ring. And it used to be that you'll say, okay, they'll appraise the diamond that they're taking out. You'll get a discount on your new diamond, bigger diamond, right? Because you got engaged when you were in your 20s, you're beginning of your financial career. Now, 20 years later, you have a lot more money. You want to have something nicer. What they used to do is come in, get a rebate or a return on some of the older diamond, leave the diamond in the store, have a trade, and then get a nicer diamond, add a little bit more, and get a nicer diamond. Now, what he's saying is people are walking into the store saying, I want lab grown. Instead of that 3rd carat that I bought 20 years ago, I want a 2-carat item now. But I'm going to pay full price. I want to keep my diamond. I'm sitting at the airport with Elodie a couple of days ago, and I'm telling him this story. Next to me sits an American retailer, and she says, yes, absolutely, I'm seeing this too. Now think about what this means. First of all, the American consumer understands that the price of lab grown is only going to sink. There's no point giving away your steady price, at least, at the very least, steady price natural diamond for something that's going to depreciate very quickly. Instead, I'm going to add a few more dollars and get a pendant. Here's a heirloom, I'll give it to my daughter, it's going to be beautiful, there's a family story around it, it's nice. So the American consumer does not believe in lab-grown diamond. They do believe in natural diamond. There's a delta, there's an area where there's a group of people, a nice chunk of the American society that says, I want it to be environmentally friendly, I don't want to hear anything about issues in any country in the world, don't talk to me about this, don't talk to me about that. All I want to hear is that A, it's a brand, B, it's beautiful, and C, if the price is right. And if the diamond industry, and in its efforts, it is going in that direction, but if the diamond industry will continue to go in that direction, I think it's something that will benefit the diamond industry in the long run. Short term, there's always a bunch of issues. So that was a long-winded answer to your short question.
Thank you, Edahn. It's always good to hear from you and about the positive sides of the natural diamond industry, because that's what the WDC is all about. So thanks again. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, next report from me about what we have done over the last, I was almost going to say few weeks, but year. First, David Gotlib, thank you very much for your kind words. And Arie Epstein, CEO of the AWDC, thank you for your hospitality. And Vin Soons. There are always people who have to do the work when the bosses agree to be hospitable. So also a thanks to the Hoffman family here for all the work they are doing, and other colleagues. So dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the World Diamond Council was established in 2000. I remember it because I was there. And so were Ronnie VanderLinden, Stefan Fischler, Sean Cohen, Ernie Blom, Elodie, and others. And Eli Isaacov was appointed president. You hear me? Appointed, not elected. And he held the post for a very long time. The essence of the WDC then was fighting conflict diamonds. And from very early on, representing the industry in the Kimberley process. But we have evolved in the past 22 years as an actor building a responsible supply chain. So let me look back on the last few weeks. We just came back from the most difficult KP plenary in many years. In February, the war started in the Ukraine, and in March, the United States imposed sanctions, first on Russian diamonds, then on Alrosa. And because we are registered in the United States and directly subject to the US sanctions, we lost Alrosa as a member, even though by definition, Alrosa diamonds are not conflict diamonds. I've stated that time and again in many interviews. Neutrality is essential for the WDC, although we are not indifferent, neither morally nor ethically. For us, neutrality is existential. If we relinquished it, we could easily bring an end to our own association. We all have our personal opinions about what is going on, but as WDC, we represent everybody. So we must defend the interests of all in the natural diamond industry, miners, polishers, retailers, service companies like banks and insurance, and independents at large. Sticking to neutrality is essential for the WDC. The war complicated the Kimberley process, and it began at the intersessional meeting in June in Kasane in Botswana, but even more so at the plenary in Gaborone. And at the plenary as well, there were fierce discussions about placing on the agenda the subject of an attack by one KP country on another KP country. Of course, consensus could not be reached. We called on the government participants to respect the diamond industry and its interest in producing countries and polishing countries. We explained that millions of people around the world depend on the KP and the well-being of our industry. As you probably have read, the discussions were long and hard during the last night of the plenary, and we were still at work when the sun came up. With no agreement in sight, the WDC came up with a compromise statement that in the end was accepted by all parties. Thanks to this breakthrough, a final communiqué was agreed, and within it, all the administrative decisions that had been passed during the plenary. The value of diamonds, as we all know, is based on consumer confidence, and the KP plays an important role in that. Without its consensus system, it would have been impossible to establish the KP in the first place. Therefore, we are not in favor of changing that system now. But we are now facing a different gigantic task. The review and reform cycle is... So, it's very nice if my phone is talking to me. Yeah. The review and reform cycle is starting next year. And with that, again, the discussion of changing the definition of conflict diamonds. That will take a lot of perseverance from us all. We need an expanded definition, starting from the point in the discussion where we left off in New Delhi in 2019 and building on that. But we also need a definition that cannot be used for reasons unassociated with the diamond industry. If we do not find a solution for those instances, a new definition will never be accepted. We are proud that once again we have been asked to continue as chair of the working group of diamond experts. Many leading specialists have become part of the team, and for that we are very grateful. The current chair, James Evans-Lomb, has made a great deal of progress, and as we all know, has done so always with his own style and his own special brand of English. He and the whole team are doing a great job. One of the important issues that still challenges the KP remains the Central African Republic. Right now, the current operational framework makes it more difficult to control exports since they are examined only after being shipped. Nonetheless, the quality of the photographs have improved. However, from sources including the new United Nations expert panel, we know about rebel movements in the country, and also that the so-called green zones are not waterproof. Therefore, we explicitly have told the KP that we are not in favor of expanding the green zones. Another important decision to come out of the 2022 plenary was the naming of Botswana as the site for the KP Permanent Secretariat. It took 4 years to come to this conclusion, and we chaired the technical expert team which managed the process. The first head of that committee was Peter Karachev, who was followed by Iris van der Vieken, and for more than a year by Wim Soons. And thanks to them, and certainly to WIM, all parties agreed that the work was done in a fair and transparent way. The other candidate countries gradually withdrew from the race, one by one, before Botswana was finally agreed upon. And we owe WIM a very great thank you. We hope that for the coming year you will chair the KP Secretariat Task Force. Next year, the ASM will help Botswana prepare for the launch of the permanent secretariat, which hopefully will begin operations on the 1st of January 2024. The ASM had not been possible without the great support of the AWDC here in Antwerp, and with support from Israel and India. We are grateful that the industry has been able to do what we did for such a long time, serving as both the engine and the oil of the KP. Not at least thanks must be extended to Elke Keulemans, who is probably known best as the longest-sitting WDC KP contributor, certainly after Udi, who had been there ever since the beginning in 2000. Udi has the longest experience in the KP of us all, and has been my trusted advisor, counselor, and friend. So has and is Elodie, who always reminds me what to do and always gives me her opinion to help me stay the course and avoid mistakes. Her work has been indispensable for the WDC, and it continues to be so. The UAE will become KP Vice Chair in 2023 and KP Chair the next year. It ultimately was not difficult for the country to be elected, although there was one more candidate. So from here, congratulations to Ahmed and Martin and their team. The KP Task Force is responsible for the negotiations and discussions in the KP working groups. To guide its work, we have carefully prepared and then stuck by our position paper, so that all who are participating know and understand the policy and strategy of the WDC. Usually that works best. And we are very grateful for those who participate in the KP Task Force. Most members give their time and knowledge generously, as well as covering the cost of the trips they make on behalf of the WDC. Over the course of the past year, we all worked hard on the revised system of warranties, which was developed over a long period. It requires more due diligence than the original SOW, and is better in making companies even more aware of their responsibilities regarding responsible sourcing. Thus far, it has not been adopted sufficiently, but that will change over time. Our executive director, Elodie, assisted by David Hoffman and others, have spent a great deal of effort in explaining the revised SOW to companies. The World Federation of Diamond Bourses has accepted the new system and updated its bylaws, making the revised system compulsory for all new WFDB Bourse members. The organization will also call on existing members to go through the exercise. Our good cooperation with Joram Dvash and the WFDB will be continued. The DMCC is another organization that explicitly has made adoption of the revised SOW compulsory for its members. Our cooperation with David Bouffard and the Responsible Jury Council has been intensified, most certainly by your president. I would like also take the opportunity to thank both Gaetano Cavalieri, president of the CIPJO, and our treasurer, Ronnie VanderLinden, as president of the International Diamond Manufacturers Association, for their cooperation and good advice during my presidency. The World Diamond Council has grown over the last year with more new members than ever. It is obvious that many realize the importance of being represented by the WDC. The growth is certainly due to Elodie, our treasurer Ronnie, and the membership committee. Also, our bylaws committee has been rather busy, as was our secretary to set up a new set of bylaws which are proposed and accepted by the board this morning. At the KP plenary in Moscow, which mostly was virtual, we had intensive discussions about the principles of responsible sourcing. In the end, and after much discussion, a declaration was accepted. It includes the following 7 principles: human rights, labor rights, community building, anti-money laundering, anti-corruption, environmental protection, and differentiating between natural and lab-grown diamonds. It's called Frame 7, and it was accepted with consensus. Later, the government of India referred to it when it decided on the monopoly of importing rough diamonds through the Gem and Jewelry Export Promotion Council. But essentially, Frame 7 is actually nothing new, for it refers to values that have long been dear to all of us. Indeed, with the exception of differentiating between natural and lab-grown diamonds, they could all be considered universal principles. At the intersessional meeting in June, Zimbabwe was proposed as the incoming chair of the KP. Although we have no vote in that, the WDC was in support. And if we look at the history of Zimbabwe, we all know that the country has had problems in the past. But our experience shows that when Angola and DRC sought to become KP chair, they too realized that they would come under the loop of the world. And this improved the situation on the ground. We trust that their precedent will also be applicable to Zimbabwe. But we still decided at intersessional that we should visit the country and especially the Maranga mine. We did so last week, after the plenary. We realized that we did not see everything, and we did not visit all the mines. Also, in no uncertain terms, some local and international NGOs pointed out to us the shortcomings in Zimbabwe and laid down their observations and complaints. We now are carefully evaluating our visit, and we shall publish soon a blog about the visit. We have already told the Zimbabwe government some of our observations. And we shall continue giving advice to the government of Zimbabwe. We shall do so confidentially in respect of the autonomy of the Zimbabwe government. As you will understand, your officers have had a busy year. We met on Zoom every 2 weeks for a few hours, and when needed, much more frequently, sometimes daily. The next election for the officers will take place in May of next year. Finally, I would like to thank all in the WDC for their contributions over the past year and during the preceding years. My tenure as president comes to an end of April, and Ferial will then take over from me, so that beginning in May she can lead the WDC and the KP Intersessional. At that time, I shall resign as an officer, board member, and from the KPTF. I will do so not because Ferial is succeeding me, but rather thanks to the fact that she is there. We are close friends, and I have full confidence that she does not need me. You won't believe it, but I really do think sometimes about time to retire. My spare time will then be used to continue to assist the responsible jury council as vice chair. As this is my last AGM, I can now say thank you all for your support. It has been an honor serving you. Next, our esteemed Executive Director, Elodie.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. So, I think you've covered almost everything. So I'm going to touch upon the year's work of the WDC and shed some light over some details. First of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gotlib, Mr. Epstein, and Wim. Thank you, AWDC, for hosting us. We are extremely grateful that one of our members is taking part into the AGM. Thank you. Regarding the membership, as we discussed already, last year, at the beginning of this year, we lost 3 members. They were Shrikunj, Grip Diamonds, and Alrosa. The first 2, we lost them around, I think, the almost end of the year, early beginning. And obviously, as you know, we terminated Alrosa's membership in early April. But we gained 8 members, and we're not going to stop there. Sorry, 6 new members were approved today. And the reason why we were able to approve today 6 new members is that the world reopened and allowing us to travel back again, because membership outreach is not possible if you do not meet in person. One of our most important, I think, the most important part of our mandate is to explain what we do at the WDC, and that's the only way you can convince people to join the cause and work closely with us. In terms of budget and expenses, again, we traveled more because, as you said, COVID is not over, but we know how to manage it. So that's actually very true. So expenses went up in terms of traveling, and they are back at their usual place, which is the second biggest expense after salaries. Nevertheless, it should be noted that the WDC operates with a clear guideline, never spend more than the annual income, especially on a year during which we lost one of our largest members, and I'm pretty sure the treasurer will not disagree when he will give his report. For your information, we talked about it last year, and it has been implemented. We get quarterly financial reports from our CPA, and it started about at the end of March. In terms of election, you touched upon it, Edward, but I'm going to come back off what happened. In last May, I think on May 19th, we elected the new board of directors. But just like Edward explained, we postponed the elections of the officers. Will take place in about 7 months from now. We have a new hire in the team, David Hoffman. Right after the AGM, actually a year ago, we hired David in a capacity of the System of Warranty International Help Desk. Thank you, David, for being here. So David has been working on the SOW, helping industry members upon request, reporting every month on the progress of the adoption to the Strategic Planning Committee, getting in touch with our international partners, as well as helping me on every project, whether it might be the WDC website, the implementation of a new graphic identity. He also started attending every KP conference call, supporting the comms team. So basically, David is everywhere and working with us on every front. Thank you, David. Now let's talk about the committees within the WDC, and I will put the spotlight on a few specific ones. But overall, we held about 30 meetings this year, just like Ed would say. He said we speak once a week. No, that's not true. We speak every day. Every day. Several times a day, to be clear. Thank you for your time. Edward, thank you for your time. Udi, because I know I take a lot of your time, so thank you very much. And yes, with the officers, we meet about every other week. Now I'd like to talk about the Kimberley Process Task Force, which is at the heart of the WDC. First of all, I would like to thank their members. It's about, I think, less than 12 people, or maybe 15 people. They're extremely active. They give their time, they give their knowledge, their expertise. They take upon themselves to travel and come with us to the Kimberley process. And they deliver, actually. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So that task force met 4 times this year, meaning twice before each Kimberley process gathering. But we had actually 3 meetings of the KP, but not all of the members of the task force took part in it. So the Kimberley Process Task Force attended the intersessional in Kasane in June 2022, but also the plenary in Gaborone. And just like I've said, some of us attended also a meeting in September. It was a meeting of the Kimberley Process Chair gathering the working group chair to start working on the review and reform cycle. I would like to note that for this meeting in September, the WDC was the only one coming with the draft proposal. You need to realize that the Kimberley Process Task Force, and therefore the WDC, is extremely active within the Kimberley process. It might not be known enough, they might not be congratulated enough, but they should be. This is a highly active group. You might also remember, because Edward just mentioned it, but the WDC chairs a working group, the working group on diamond experts. We have the former chair, I think, with us today, Mark van Borstel. We have the current chair, James. We also chaired for several years the technical experts team. We have the last chair, Wim Soons, with us. That team for 4 years tried to get out of the ground a very important project for the Kimberley process, which is establishing a permanent secretariat to ensure institutional memory, to formalize, professionalize the Kimberley process in many ways. Until now, we have relied heavily on Helga. Thank you very much, Helga, for everything that you keep on doing for the WDC and the Kimberley process. Regarding the review and reform cycle, I just told you that we came with a draft proposal. The reason is, right after Kasane, the WDC officially requested the launch of that reform. That was us, the industry, who decided to give a nudge to the entire KP participant to start that reform, because without a new definition, nothing will change. And Edward already touched upon this. This is a crucial issue for us. To help the KPTF, I've recently built a database. You need to imagine that when we are attending those meetings, it's from morning to night until 4:30 a.m. We are constantly going from one document to another, and so we need more tools. And that's one of the things I I wanted to do this year is to create more tools for the WDC, and especially a database that could allow any KPTF member to find the documents that they need. We also have a book that was given by KP participants a few years ago, compiling every administrative decision from the Kimberley process. I intend to do my best to extend it because that book covers 2000 until 2017. So we need to extend it now. We need to make it up to date, just to, first of all, to serve the KPTF and hopefully the industry in general. During that year, obviously, because it was a crucial year for many reasons, because of the war in Ukraine, because we knew that the reform cycle hopefully would start in 2023. We held about 25 bilateral meetings with KP participants, meaning countries, but also with the other observers. And that's the direction I intend to keep on taking with Edward and also with Feriel, keeping on engaging with as many delegations as possible in order to effect a change, a real one. We need to engage with every part of the globe, because within the KP, you see the diamond industry from your perspective, from your national laws, from your trade interest, from your political alliances. We need to engage with everyone. So again, thank you to our KPTF members to be there. I know that some of them are attending in the audience, Morgan and Alex. Others are online, like Kelly. Thank you very much. You know that within the Kimberley process, you also do some review visits, and I would like to thank the KPTF for taking part in those visits. We strive to take part in every review visits of the Kimberley process. We express readiness for 13 visits, for your information. Due to KP, they were not able to be scheduled already, but some of them already took part. Regarding now, I will move on to the Finance and Audit Committee. You touched upon those, Edward, but just for your information, we hold those two committees in October 18th and 20th to cover the financial situation of the WDC as of September 30th, 2022. The financial statements of 2021 and the projected budget for 2023 were approved by those committees. The WDC is still in a strong financial position, but still, we are going to be careful, and also we're going to look for more income, namely members. If you know anyone who's interested, we are a cool group. Exactly. In terms of board meeting, we held, I think, 5 board meetings this year, and amongst the decision taken or the news, we appointed new committee members, 3 for the KPTF. We appointed 4 new members of record, 1 member for the bylaws committee, the chair of the audit committee. We approved 6 new members. We presented and launched and implemented the new website and the graphic identity. We terminated our ROSA's membership. We adopted a resolution to postpone the elections. We discussed work on the bylaws, updates obviously on the Kimberley process and on the SOW during each board meetings. Now let's talk about the system of warranties. So following the launch in September 2021, between November 2021 and February 2022, I had the pleasure and honor to give a few webinars. Thanks to AWDC, first one, the Canadian Jeweler Association, NDC and its members, the US industry, the DMCC, the DMIA, and the GJPC. But it's not enough. We need more. We need to engage more with you. We are here. We are standing ready. We you might remember that we launched a campaign around the same time as we launched the SOW with SOW ambassadors. Thank you to those who are present in the room. They were from all over the globe, and they were kind enough to give us a quote on the system of warranties. We also had a campaign to thank them last summer. As I've told you earlier, David and I kept on reaching out to our partners, and we will keep on doing so. So please, if you need us to come and explain, we will do so. I will do so very soon in Dubai. Thank you, Martin, for the invitation. Thank you, DMCC, on December the 13th. What can I tell you more about it? Yes, we report every month. And every month, David urges everyone to keep encouraging their constituency to adopt the system of warranties. Please do so. Thank you. So just a couple of words on the plenary. You talked about the final communique. I would like to state maybe, or to restate, that it was the WDC who was able to bring a proposal that met consensus. So this is another example of why we need engaged and committed people within the KPTF, young minds, bright minds, and also more women. We need more women. I see only 8, me included, so it's barely not enough. So in any case, we did a lot of work. We partnered with CIBJO on an educational project. I recorded 2 modules for their training on sustainability on the SOW and the Kimberley process. As you might know, I'm also a founding member of the Young Diamantaires and part of the organizing committee. And it's a great group for me to engage with because we got 2 new members from the Young Diamantaires, younger minds, and a woman also, men and a woman. We had a great interview with our president, Edward Asscher, and I'm going on a trip with them next February to engage with the young Indian community and to talk about, once again, the SOW, the Kimberley process, and the WDC. The WDC took part in a few events this year, the Dubai Diamond Conference, the JGT, Dubai Jewelry Show, Gem Awards, 24 Karat Club, JCK Las Vegas Natural Diamond Summit. Why am I listing those? Because this is where we can engage with you, with our members, to ensure that you are still satisfied, but also this is where we can engage with potential new members. So we're going to do so. If I'm not mistaken, and I'm going to turn to our incoming president, the future is about the definition of the conflict diamonds. We want to expand it, so we will engage with delegation, and we'll do so, we'll travel. But the future is also bringing new members in. Why new members? Because we need new people in the KPTF. We need more minds to work with us on those actually very exciting subjects. And finally, a lot of work has been done on communications, thanks to Stephen, who I've been working with closely. He'll give you more details, and I have many details, but I'm not going to read my entire report because it's going to be very long. We changed our IT company. We are not working with Yellow Belly. They are taking care of the maintenance of our website. We introduced new topics for the newsletter. You remember we have diamond in the industry and digging into the Kimberley process. Yes, I want to see more women under the spotlight, like Morgan, who was our latest one. Digging into the Kimberley process is actually crucial because this is a blog where we explain what's happening within the Kimberley process and where we educate on the Kimberley process. But we introduced a new one called the New Generation for the youngest, the incoming generation. We have one here, Alexander Goul, with us, and we have also Diamond Empowerment, case studies on diamond-producing countries. We produced a new presentation to educate, to onboard our members, our prospects, that can be found on our website as well. Look at our website, check it out, check out the news section, check out the resources. You have lots of tools there. I'm not going to go into much detail, but Stephen works tremendously to write great articles and to organize our website, so please check it out. And finally, I would like to say thank you. Thank you to my president. I said my, because he's my president. But I'm not done. The reason why I give him my opinion is because it's extremely challenging, and that's great. We have a president that is extremely opinionated, who never shies away from taking a stance, which is sometimes very worrying for me, but we are extremely proud of him. And I love working with you all. My officers have always time for me when I have questions. Thank you. This is not every day that you can find such a great team. I think we do love each other. That's why no, I'm not joking. I mean, that's the truth. That's why more people should join the WDC, because everything is about human relationship. Everything is about how much we trust each other, how much we wish to work with each other. So join us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elodie. That's very funny, because I had in mind a few sentences at the end of this meeting, but you just made them. Next item on the agenda is our treasurer about the finance of the WDC. Ronnie.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure this is the most exciting part of the afternoon. You guys can't wait for this report. You're waiting. Okay, is Stephen online? Are we posting anything, or I'm just going to... All right, so a couple of things. First, let me start off by Elodie, fabulous, every word that you said. And one of the things when you go to check out the new website, check out the new logo, the updated logo that we've done to show the new and improved WDC. But what I'll start out with here is we have our balance sheet, our comparisons 2021, 2022. It's year over year. So it's September 30th, 21, I'll give you the highlight, to September 30th, 2022. Current, I'll give you total. Current checking and savings as of September 30th, 2022 was $999,577.16. At the September 30th, 21, we had $930,421.40. A change of $69,155.76. That is because we were able to take additional funds of $55,000 and put it on deposit, thanks to the organization, the way the organization is run. We have total current assets of 1.1 million, almost 1.2 as of September 30th, 22. September 30th, 21, we had 932,813.63. Again, a change of 69,029.49. So our total assets at the end of September 30th, 2022 was $1,023,563.11. That 11 cents is important, which shows an increase of $70,801.43 over 2021. So if I just run through it again, I mean, total liabilities and equity is $1,023,563.11. Again, change of $70,801.43. That is our balance sheet. What I would like to bring up, and I guess we can do this, we have to bring this up among the Treasury bill. Do we talk about the investments or? All right, well, what we're going to do in order for the association, for the WDC to garner more income because of certain members that we lost this year, that we will be losing for next year, we're going to put up to $500,000 in Treasury bills in the United States, which are higher interest bearing and secure. At least we believe them to be secure. And what that'll do is if we take a certain amount, we could probably have an income, additional income of $23,000 to $25,000 over the year, which, if you take it at a $5,000 level of being a member of the WDC, we have 5 new members. So it will help the bottom line. That's the good news. Bad news is the fact that we've lost Alrosa, which was a big chunk of change. Unfortunately, we are a U.S. Delaware corporation, of which there are sanctions, obviously, from the United States to Russia. So Alrosa voluntarily resigned from the WDC back in February, the end of February, beginning of March. We have also, unfortunately, lost 2 others, 2 other companies, Shrakuj and Grib Diamonds, which is also in Russia. We have currently, well, here guys, hold on, let me go back up a little bit. We have collected over the year the entire revenue and membership that we figured on, which was $495,000. That's the good news. I'm going to talk to you now about, as soon as I can find where I have it, our projected, and I just had it in front of me. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm so sorry. Where's the projected budget? Because that we need to discuss with all of you. Anybody know? Do you have it there? I just had it in front of me. Yeah, the comparison, 2021. It was on my desk here. Oh, how about, oh, this is the profit and loss. Where's our budget? I am sorry. Station break, folks. All right, well, anyway, what is happening is we had a projected budget, which we collected at $495,000. Yeah, thanks. Where did it go on my desk here? I had it, unless I put it. We had a projected membership, and we collected, and here it is, right in front of me. Thank you. Of $495,000, which we collected everything. For 2023, we're projecting at currently $470,000. That is with the 6 new members we just took in. And obviously, Alrosa was a big part of membership. Their membership dues were $55,000, so that's a sizable hole. I will make a commitment to all of you that I believe we will surpass in 2023, unless, you know, for some unforeseen circumstances that we can't get new members. But as Elodie had mentioned earlier to all of you, it, you know, be really very helpful for those of you in this room, for the board, to reach out to others and bring them to the WDC, especially after what was accomplished just now at plenary. Do we need to go over the budget or have the budget approved? We don't? Okay, well, in that case, that's the only thing I really need to talk to all of you about is the revenue and the part that we really need to work on this. So that's it. That's the Treasurer's report.
Thank you very much,
A lot easier than this morning.
Ronnie, if you sent out all the invoices in December, you
Yes.
know how we diamantaires are. We love to prepay.
Expect your invoices in December.
We come to the end of the AGM, but there is always any other business. If there are any members around here who want to ask a question or say something, please do so now. Any requests for the floor? If not, I thank you all for attending the AGM. We have a short break till 3:45, let's say. And then we continue with the second last board meeting of the day. Thank you all for attending, and hope to see you soon at another occasion. Thank you. Bye.